Now, the 112th Congress began with a reading of the U.S. Constitution, and promising to abide by and respect the Constitution also helped get hopeful candidates elected, especially those Tea Party candidates. Now, some folks say that today was their first test. Now, the House was expected to approve an extension of about 3 provisions of the controversial Patriot Act, but it actually failed to pass. So, what does that now mean for your average American? Earlier today, I spoke with Shelley Roche of BiteStyle.tv. I asked her if this was a shock. Listen.
Yeah, I'm actually shocked. I don't think anyone was expecting the vote to end up that way.
What do you when you think of the Patriot Act, though, what comes to mind?
Unconstitutional, if I had to give it one word.
So would you say that the Tea Party candidates sort of fulfilled their promises in this case? I mean, we don't know yet exactly who voted how, but would you say that that they've passed their first test?
You know, it's encouraging that this happened and they failed to extend the provisions. But I think there are so many other initiatives underway that undermine our individual liberties that we have to be cautiously optimistic and you know, just keep fighting. You know, you have other acts like the kill switch bill for the internet and that sort of thing. So just, I think overall we need to still stay on top of them and be cautiously optimistic.
Well, speaking of the internet kill switch bill, as you say, talk about this bill and why you're so against it. Well,
for one thing, the internet is basically our means for communication. You know, if you look at what's happened in Egypt recently, the internet is our biggest way of organizing, spreading information. I mean, I'm looking at Twitter right now and seeing everybody talking about, you know, the Patriot Act. So we really need to keep that intact as is and keep government out of it.
But what is their justification for putting this in place? Because as I understand it, they were conducting these quote-unquote internet shutdown drills, and they said that this was in case of a cyber attack or in case of a terrorist attack that they had to do this. How else are they sort of justifying it, the politicians who are introducing these measures?
Yeah, well, that's it. It's always, you know, a fear-mongering kind of, we need this for our safety. We need this to protect against terrorism, against cyber attack. And that's really the tool that they use to push all of this legislation through. And really, that's not the case. It's just something, it's a tool that they use to get these bills passed.
Do you think that these kinds of things are going to hurt Obama politically?
I think the fact that he campaigned against the Patriot Act, for example, and then now he's out there supporting the extension, I think that definitely is going to hurt him. That's not a good flip-flop to be making.
So you think that voters are going to remember this come 2012? But Shelley, you know, for you personally, let's say, which lawmakers do you think are actually defending your rights and not sort of saying, hey, you have to give up these freedoms in the name of national security? Is there anyone on the Hill, anyone in the Obama administration that you feel is sort of looking out for the quote-unquote average American?
There are very few people. You know, if you look when Obama came into office, he surrounded himself with a lot of the same people. But there are a few politicians that really stand out, such as Ron Paul or his son Rand Paul, who have been fighting for liberty. And in Ron Paul's case, you know, he was adamantly against the Patriot Act, and he is for internet freedom, and he continues to be a real advocate of the Constitution. So there are very few, but they're out there.
But do you think that a lot of folks that I interview say, when it comes to certain things, that there is a lot of partisan politics here in Washington, D.C., but when it comes to certain things, like foreign policy, perhaps who to support in Egypt, or even things like the Patriot Act, there's not much difference between the two parties, because what they run into is the fear of being sort of called unpatriotic or being perceived as weak on national security. How do we sort of change that so that's not so much part of the conversation?
That's a great question, and I think it's going to be very difficult when you look at the mainstream media, which is where people get most of their news from. Our mainstream media is very partisan, very, you know, taking a side and sticking to it and kind of sticking with the party lines. And as long as we have that in place, it's really up to the individual to make an effort to get educated and to get your news from multiple sources, and just try to make sure that you're getting a full picture of what's really going on, not just kind of a soundbite that you're being told.
Shelley Roach of ByteStyle.tv, and I think a lot of people are shocked that it didn't pass. Everyone was saying it was going to, so we're going to have to see what happens if they're going to take it up again.